It is Sunday, April 28th, 2024, and we are live on Ancient Faith Radio. I'm Elisa Bielatich-Davis, and this is Everyday Orthodox. And, we're just here Sunday nights talking to Orthodox Christians around the country, around the world. And I just find that it's such a beautiful thing to sit down and just start asking someone questions and find out a little bit about their life and their story. And of course, we in the United States, we're split up between different jurisdictions, worship on different calendars, different languages. So I think it's really a beautiful way to achieve unity in the church, to just get to know each other and to think of one another as brothers and sisters in Christ. So here we are, and tonight we have a wonderful show. I think you're going to enjoy it very much. Our producer, Matushka Trudy Richter, is right here producing the show, and she'll answer the phone if you call in. You can call in at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. So tonight's guest, I'm very excited about. Tonight we have Jonathan Jackson on the show. And Jonathan is, I think he's best known as an actor, but truly he's an actor, he's a musician, he's a writer, a poet. He does really a lot of very beautiful work in different areas. And so I'm especially excited to talk to him tonight. You may have known him as Lucky Spencer on General Hospital for literally decades. You may have known him in Tuck Everlasting or on Nashville, but he's a very successful actor and a wonderful guy. And he's an Orthodox Christian, which, we Orthodox love knowing that there's someone, in a movie or on a show that's Orthodox. It gets very exciting. And he liked Jonathan very much as an actor. And then in 2012, he was receiving an award, an Emmy. And he stood up and he thanked the monks on Mount Athos. And I think half of the Orthodox world, we all started saying to each other, did you see that? Did you guys see that? Lucky Spencer thanked the monks on Mount Athos. How did he know about Mount Athos? It was all very exciting. So without any further ado, let me welcome to the program, Jonathan Jackson. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here. And of course, what I didn't say is that Jonathan is in Unsung Hero, which is a beautiful film we talked about last week as well with Richard Ramsey, who co-wrote and directed it. And Jonathan acts in the film. He's fantastic in the film, actually. It's really quite fun. And the film, this is the opening weekend. So get out there, go into theaters and go see it. But let's start at the beginning, though, Jonathan. Tell me, so where were you born? Where did you grow up?
It's two different places for that. So I was born in Orlando, Florida, and I grew up in Washington State, complete opposite, side of the country. So my parents moved to Washington when I was about 6 weeks old, and I grew up in a small town in Battleground, Washington, an even smaller town, Meadowglade. And I was there until around, I think, 1993. And then we were kind of naive or crazy enough to go to California and pursue, an acting career when I was 10, turning 11 years old.
Wow.
And then we ended up, my brother is an actor as well. And we ended up getting some work, and my parents thought it was going to be a 2 or 3 month experiment, and then we'd come home, and then we just kind of kept working from there. And so we didn't really know what we were doing. We were just kids, but it stayed with us.
Wow. So your parents, were they also sort of creative artist type people? Like what sort of personality sort of goes, yeah, let's do it. Let's take the boys and see what happens.
I don't know. In terms of what kind of personality, my parents are both very creative people. But, in terms of a profession, our father is a family practice physician. Our mother is a dental hygienist and manages his practice. But his love is music. And so he's also a songwriter and singer. And I think that's where a lot of the creativity, influence came from. He would put on concerts in Vancouver, Washington, and Portland, Oregon, most of our childhood. And so I would hear him in the basement with, a 7-piece band rehearsing all of these classic country songs my whole childhood. And so the first time I ever performed was with him. at one of his shows. I was probably 8 years old or something like that. And I don't know if it may, I'm sure that had some kind of an influence. And then we went to Universal Studios, I think must have been 1991, for a family vacation. And my brother and I kind of just got excited about, we'd never seen the behind the scenes of how films are made. And, we went home and kind of begged our parents to let us try to get into it. And they were amazing and supportive and really helped us. And were willing to sacrifice. My father worked in Washington at his practice and would fly down every weekend to be with us for 8 years. They did that.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's neat. That's neat. Well, and there you go. That's very beautiful. So you are Orthodox. Did you grow up Orthodox, or your parents Orthodox?
No. No, my parents on both sides were probably about 4 generations Seventh-day Adventist. And they were leaving that church when I was probably 8 or 9, I would say. And they were serious about their faith, really, integritous, pious people. So we would continue to have a lot of prayer time as a family. When they left the Seventh-day Adventist Church, there wasn't a sense of, this doesn't mean anything to us anymore. It seemed like it was still very important, but we didn't really have a church to go to. It was just, we're leaving this. We don't really know where we're going. And so when we were in Los Angeles, I was about 11, and we didn't really attend a church for most of my teenage years. I remember when I was 14, it sounds like one of those old stories you'd hear, walking 2 miles in the snow to church, but there was no snow. It was Burbank. However, I do remember walking a couple miles to the closest church because I just wanted to be around other people of faith. And we didn't really have that. Now, my dad, and this will give my age away. My dad would give us cassette tapes from a couple different preachers, because he knew we weren't going to church. We didn't know what church to go to, so he would give us cassette tapes from a couple people, and one of them was an Australian preacher named Dr. Desmond Ford, and we would listen to those, almost every night. It became a routine that my brother and I would just listen to these. And I remember one night was very different than all the others. I was probably just 12 years old, and his talk was on the holiness of God and the pride of the human heart, and how impossible it is to please God, or I guess impress God with our supposed righteousness. And I was only 12, but something happened. I was really kind of cut to the heart, and I realized that I was very far from God somehow. I don't know. It just that I'll never forget that moment, because it changed the trajectory of everything. And I was working in Hollywood. I was on General Hospital, but all of a sudden everything was different. I had this kind of deep wounding inside of me, and a longing to understand what life was about, I guess.
So would you say did that move you to try to get closer to God? Or,
Yes.
Yeah,
very much so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like a paradoxical thing, it was kind of like a simultaneous revelation of how far away I was from God, in a very genuine way. I mean, it was kind of almost shocking. But the simultaneous revelation was this overwhelming sense that I was loved. And so both of those things happened at the same time. And so I started to read the scriptures, like Matthew 5 and 6 in particular was really important. if your righteousness does not exceed that of the Pharisees, those kinds of things. If you say, you fool, to someone, that's like murder in the eyes of the law. If you look at a woman with lust, you've committed adultery in your heart. And it was like the standard, the beauty, the height, I guess, of holiness was just so incredible that I just felt absolutely useless and weak. And in that very moment, that was the moment where I felt like something inside me said, that's exactly how I want you to feel. That's exactly how I want you to feel, so that you can, understand grace. And then the last judgment, that was the other one I remember. It was like, I must have been reading Matthew, because those are the ones that I remember. But yeah, that just, it was incredible to me. So, it was like the beginnings of the whole paradox thing. Even long before Orthodoxy entered the picture, it was there.
Absolutely. That's neat. But I think that's how it has to be, in a sense, right? Because we really have to have the humility and that understanding that there is something else to reach for. And you need both of those at the same time to be able to get started on that journey. So thank God and you were young to come to that, really. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. So
I think I was just going to say, in terms of how young I was, I think it was almost a necessity thing, because, I was in Hollywood, and it is a very intense spiritual environment. And so as I look back, I've thought about that, and I have a sense that I needed that miracle to happen in my soul at a very young age to, kind of get a hold of me, because the wave, the sort of tsunami of that place is intense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting. I've spoken to people before, and I think there's an assumption that it's very hard to be Christian in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And outside of Hollywood. And then when I've spoken to people who are Orthodox in Hollywood, often they'll say, actually, Hollywood is a very spiritual place, and it's very open to a lot of kinds of spirituality. So on the one hand, there's a temptation to just, be drawn away into some other kind of spirituality. But at the same time, people are fairly respectful of a person's faith when they see something, when they see that it's very important to you and that it means something to you. Is that your experience, or what do you think?
I think it's a bit of both. I would say on a personal level, people are very respectful and kind of open. It is a lot of people there, are very into Buddhism or New Age, that kind of stuff. So Christianity, generally speaking, and when people in America and in Hollywood think of Christianity, they don't really think of Orthodox Christianity. They think of primarily, evangelical, Protestant, and Catholic, Roman Catholic Christianity. So, I would say on a personal level, people are fairly respectful, but there is a very intense rub when it comes to if you don't want to go along with certain things in your career, if you don't want to, if certain power entities are leaning on you to do X, Y, or Z, and you don't want to do that, mm-hmm. primarily because of your faith, that can cause serious problems, so it's a little bit of both.
That makes sense. Well, and it's interesting too, right? There's sort of the industry pressure, and then there's the personal relationships, and they're not always aligned. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there you are. How old were you when you started on General Hospital?
I was 11.
Okay. So, soap opera work is mm-hmm. beyond full time, right? It's just all day, every day, right? But I assume with kids, you've got labor laws that limit it a little bit. But what were your days like as an 11 or 12-year-old kid?
They were still pretty crazy. There are some laws in place, but they don't quite maybe do everything that they're meant to do. It's difficult because soap operas, there are no reruns, So
Yep.
when I was working there in the 90s, it was literally 50 weeks a year. You'd get a 2-week vacation. And I was also doing school at the same time. So that was a lot. And then there were some movies that I started to do at the same time. Camp Nowhere was one of them, Deep End of the Ocean, films like that. And what would happen was, because I was on contract with ABC, I would maybe book a film and say, "Can I do this?" They'd say, "Yeah, you can. We'll let you do this movie. You can film it Tuesday through Saturday, and then you'll film your whole week's worth of work on General Hospital on Monday." So I'd be working on a film Tuesday through Saturday. I'd be memorizing like 40 pages on Sunday, doing all of that work on Monday, and then going back to the film while I was doing school. So even with the, child labor laws, they can figure out a way to,
Yeah.
kind of go crazy. So it was a lot, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it sounds like it. And no wonder your family was not at church on Sunday. Frankly, I mean, part of that, right, is just when you have a crazy schedule and your dad's only in town on the weekends, and it's a lot. It's a lot. So how were you, I want to say almost like emotionally, as you're growing older, right? You're going through adolescence, you're going through all of these crazy years, but at the same time, you have a very adult life in a sense, because you're really working all the time and you're responsible for your schooling in a different sort of way than a kid who's just showing up at school. What were you like? Were you happy? Were you quiet? What were you like?
Wow. That's a good question. I was a pretty serious kid, I think, partially because of that. I was very focused. I had a lot of pressure, performing is a very particular thing. There's an incredible amount of stress and pressure around performing. So you kind of learn to live with that. I would say that the spiritual life that was so necessary for me. I don't know how I would have been able to survive any of that without that. And in addition to that, I would say music was a huge help. I started playing guitar when I was young. I was writing a lot of songs. There was certainly some, kind of divine therapy there. I was also really blessed to have Anthony Geary and Jeannie Francis as they played my parents on General Hospital. They were, Luke and Laura on General Hospital. So even amidst kind of the craziness of the schedule and all of these things, to have, my first and foremost, my parents in real life, who are amazing, but then also to have these incredible mentors who were playing my parents on TV day in and day out, that really was a godsend, because I was able to grow as a young artist, feeling safe and feeling like they had my back. So that was huge. But I was definitely, my parents have told me I was kind of wild as a kid. I was kind of extroverted, and I've always been an introvert my whole life. And so sometimes I wonder what happened, if it was partly the sort of like consistent performing thing that happened. But I was very quiet and focused and kind of, inward. A lot of reading, a lot of music, a lot of observing.
Excellent. And it seems like you're probably similar to that still now, would you say? Have you?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, neat. Okay. So as you're going along, as you mentioned, your spiritual life was such a big thing, but you didn't have like a church structure. So you're just exploring the scriptures on your own and presumably praying quite a bit. At what point in your life does something sort of structured come in to your spirituality?
Well, I mean, it was in steps and stages. Throughout all those teenage years, it was, reading the scriptures, listening to some of those people I mentioned. And then also I was so thankful for C.S. Lewis. I started reading C.S. Lewis when I was probably 13 or so, Mere Christianity and The Great Divorce and the Screwtape Letters and all of his kind of, theological works. And that was so formative for me. I really can't imagine who I would be without that. It came at such an important time in my life. And then, not to jump ahead too far, but, discovering Orthodoxy, I look back and I can see how much of C.S. Lewis's influence was there, kind of keeping me in a little bit, on the narrow path to some extent, because there are so many versions of Christianity out there. To have a voice like his that is very grounded and rooted in history and not just the cultural moment was really important. Chesterton as well came a little later, but he was really influential. So, I went to other churches, as I mentioned. I never understood what the point of church was, because for me, I was like, I can listen to these sermons, I can read C.S. Lewis, I can listen to this beautiful music at home. Like, why am I going to church? Why am I? And so that was a big question mark. And then we slowly kind of got connected with more of the charismatic Protestant world. Mm-hmm. And that was a little bit of a glimpse. I thought, okay, maybe, this seems real. There's a sense of worship. There's a sense of a desire to encounter God, an openness to the Holy Spirit, things like this. So it felt more authentic. But pretty soon after a few years of that, it was the same feeling of something's missing. I still didn't quite get it. But I didn't know what to do with that. It was just kind of in the back of my mind. It's like, I thought, I don't know. I just don't understand what the point of going to church is. And then I think it was 2006 or 2007, I was shooting a film in Romania, and my wife and I went to Rome, Italy, because she's Italian, and we had a few days off of work. So we went to Rome. And that was the moment when it really started to land, where I thought, okay, why do I not understand what happened after the apostles died until, Martin Luther? Like, why do I have no sense of my own history as a Christian? And why do we have all these different versions and all these different theologies? I'd kind of read enough to understand there are massive differences between believing we have free will and we don't. Like that's like that's a big deal. That's not a small thing. Right. And so it set me on a quest, I guess you could say, to study Christian history. I had no idea where it was going to lead me. I just thought, I just really need to know this. I love the scriptures. At this point, I can't remember, maybe I was 26 at the time. I love the scriptures. I've been reading all this and, for many years, but I don't understand what it is to be a Christian in the corporate sense of a community of the body of Christ. I don't understand what that means. Even with all the experiences in various Protestant churches, it still felt like something significant was missing. So that kind of set us on the journey.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it is such a striking thing. I feel like in a lot of ways, American Christianity feels like that, where it's like there's the Bible and then there's us today. There's this contemporary church and there's a Bible, and there's like a huge chasm between those two in time, but we don't think about it. And the day that you see it is such a revelation, because it's like, oh, God, I'm missing something. Like there's this tremendous piece that I'm missing. And, but I mean, I guess that just goes on with America as not being we're not a very old country. We don't have that kind of history, but, yeah. So, okay. So now we've already skipped ahead to you having a wife, and I would love to know, where did you meet her? At what point along your path did you encounter her?
Well, we met on General Hospital. I was 17, I think, when we first met. I was leaving the show. She was just coming on to the show. So we didn't really get to know each other too well during that time. We met, but yeah, we just didn't get to know each other. I left, and we started having these Bible studies at our home, again, because we didn't really have a church.
Right.
So we would have these Bible studies and invite, different friends, people in the industry. Some worked on the production side, some were actors and actresses. And there was a group of maybe around 20 of us that would get together at our house. And it was quite lovely. It was beautiful. It was very simple, and times of, prayer, reading the scriptures. And, people in Los Angeles, they, most of them have left their families to be there. It's, we were unique in the sense that my parents were there because my dad was usually there on the weekends. And so a lot of people kind of ended up gravitating towards our house because there was a sense of family. There was not only my brother and I, our sister was elsewhere at school most of the time, but my brother and I were there, but our parents were there. And so a lot of the people would come there and feel this sense of being mothered and fathered. And so it was really lovely. So my wife, my future wife, Elisa, was still on General Hospital. She got invited to the Bible study that we were having. And she had walked away from her faith at this point. She was raised Roman Catholic. She just kind of lost her faith. The world, got a hold of her. And so she was in a pretty, as she would put it in her own words, in a pretty desperate, lost place, I guess. And someone from the show from General Hospital invited her to our place. And so she decided to come there. And she ended up having a very powerful encounter with God, which I didn't know that this was happening. But she left our house and was driving back to her apartment. And she said that she had to pull over to the side of the road, and she just started to weep. And she felt the presence of God for the first time in years. And she started to come every week. So I saw her, for probably, 2.5 years at these gatherings. They were always in a group environment. We were never alone. We never went out to coffee or anything like this. And it was very respectful. There was no flirting, really. There was no inappropriate glances. I mean, it was very focused on being there for our spiritual healing. And about 2.5 years into that, I went one night, I drove to her apartment and called her and asked if I could come over. And she said yes. So it was the first time we were ever alone. And I ended up proposing to her that night. And and she said yes. She said, "Did you know how I'd been feeling about you?" And I said, "Well, I kind of knew somehow. I don't know how I knew." And so it was a very unique, romance. I was very young. I was 19 when I proposed and 20 when we got married. So.
Wow. But it's you're somehow this story is just perfect for you because you are so serious and sincere. And so you have this like very quiet courtship and then just sort of, hello, would you like to get married?
It's funny
this
you
is
say
how
that.
I'm feeling. How are you feeling? Like, this is so serious.
It's funny you say that because when I proposed to her, she got she was so surprised that she said she got dehydrated like immediately. And she just got up and went to the kitchen and started chugging water. So I was sitting there with the ring for like a couple minutes, just kind of going, yeah, okay, this could go one way, one of two ways. But when she finally came back, I said to her, I said, I know what I'm doing. But the reason I said that was I wanted her to know I was like, I wasn't doing something crazy and impetuous. Like it was,
right.
I had been up till 2 a.m. praying about it, a few different times. And so there was a lot of prayer that went into it. And and that's why there was a sense of peace. It's a strange thing, when you kind of know something that you don't have any external evidence of why you should know it. But we both kind of just somehow knew.
That's beautiful. I mean, that's how God does it. He just gives it to us, and it's just there, and we see it. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, we are going to take a short break. Before we do, Jonathan, my mom had a comment on our YouTube channel. Matushka Trudy's like, we have a listener with a comment. And I'm like, well, that's Mom. Look at that. Hi, Mom. My mom would love to know. My mom says, you are such a humble man. What is your favorite C.S. Lewis book, if there is one?
Oh my gosh.
That's actually the hardest question you're going to be asked all week, I think.
I think it is. All right. If I won't be held to this, but in the moment, if I had to pick a fiction, I would say Till We Have Faces, and a prose book. Well, that might be harder. Either The Weight of Glory or The Great Divorce. Well, that's kind of fiction, or Mere Christianity. It's so tough.
With C.S. Lewis, it's hard to divide the fiction from the not. Sometimes
true,
some of it's real obvious, right? But like something like The Great Divorce feels like a work of theology, but it's a story.
Okay, if we put it under that category, I'd say The Great Divorce, and then Till We Have Faces to me is just a masterpiece. That's incredible.
That's beautiful. All right, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with Jonathan Jackson.
Everyday Orthodox with Elisa Bielatich-Davis will be back in a moment. Give Elisa and her guest a call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. We venerate your immaculate icon, O good Lord, and entreat you to forgive our offenses, O Christ our God. By your own choice, you were pleased to ascend the cross in the flesh to deliver us, whom you created, from our slavery to the foe. Therefore we cry to you with gratitude. You have filled all things with joy, O our Savior, by coming to save the world. AtheniteUSA.com offers holy icons for those wishing to plant something spiritual in their souls. Immaculate 22-karat gold leaf hand-applied on solid wood. Use the code FAITH for free shipping. Come and see. AtheniteUSA.com. We're back with Everyday Orthodox with Elisa Bielatich-Davis. Do you have a question for Elisa and today's guest? Call in now at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here again is Elisa.
And welcome back to Everyday Orthodox. We're here tonight with Jonathan Jackson. And Jonathan, I haven't asked you much yet about the film that came out this weekend, Unsung Hero. First question, Richard Ramsey told me that there was a funny story about, I think, how you got involved in the film or how you first heard about it. So I want to hear the funny story. He said he would not tell it. He would just let you.
Well, I hope I remember the same funny story he's thinking of.
No one will know if you don't. It's fine.
Okay. That's true. That's true. So, I mean, one of the producers of the film reached out to me and asked if I would be interested in being involved in the project. And he said, I think the writer and director goes to your church. And I thought, I don't think so, because it's like a small Orthodox church, and a lot, in Nashville. I was thinking he probably thinks I'm going to some kind of like mega Protestant church or something where they have writers and directors all over the place. So I thought, I doubt it. And then I thought, well, wait a second. There was someone that I met because we hadn't been going to that church for very long. And I thought, wait, there is someone I met. And I thought, well, maybe that's... So it turns out, yes, there is a writer and filmmaker. and it was Richard Ramsey. So I was really, pleasantly surprised by that. And then I got to know, I really got to know Richie more in in the process of being a part of the film than prior. I'd met him a couple times, but we didn't really know each other. We're sort of like mutual introverts that probably never would have gotten to know each other if it wasn't for this film.
I could see that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then you heard about it. What
Mm-hmm.
they already knew what role they wanted you to play, right? Like they already had this, because I think it was Richard who said he thought of it and he was just like, oh, that would be perfect, which is so funny because I think people are reacting like thinking that this is such a, I don't know, maybe a departure or something, or that there's something unexpected about it.
Yes.
But so tell me about it. How did they represent the part, and how do you think about it?
Well, I don't really remember how they represented it. But I mean, I guess I was a little shocked too by it because I didn't look at the part. So I play Eddie DeGarmo, he was a musician, a very successful musician, and sort of aesthetically kind of, the hair band rocker from the late 80s and 90s, and then he started a record label. So I mean, I guess there's something there because I'm a musician, but I don't think I've ever had that hair, and so.
Yeah.
And he, Eddie DeGarmo he's got this very low Southern voice and presence and all of that. So I don't know. It was interesting. I looked at it and I thought, yeah, I don't know why they would think of me for this exactly, but maybe but sometimes that's kind of intriguing when other people can see something that maybe you can't even see. But to be honest, I put the character itself on the back burner. I wasn't as interested in what role I was going to be playing until I read the script and realized what the film as a whole, if I felt like it was a good film.
Yep.
And so they sent me the script, and I read it on an airplane. And I remember saying to my wife prior to reading it, it's because I kind of know Richie at this point, and I knew one of the producers, and I thought, I have no idea whether I'm going to respond to this. Like, there's a lot of scripts over the years that I've read that I don't like very much for various reasons. And so you just never know. And I read the script, and I turned to my wife on the plane, and I was in tears. I said, honey, this is really something. This is a very special project. And that was the main thing for me. I kind of, after I had that experience with the story and with the script, then I went back and re-looked at Eddie DeGarmo, and I thought, okay, can I do this? Is this something I can actually portray? And there was a bizarre kind of intuitive sense towards it. I don't know if I've known people like Eddie throughout my life or what, but there was something there. I thought, yeah, I think I have a way into this, an approach here that might work. I wasn't expecting quite the aesthetic bigness that it ended up being, but that was fun. When a character's kind of loud externally with clothing and hair, but then Eddie's kind of a poetic soul, really. He's kind of a thoughtful artist. And when you have that dressed up in that kind of eccentricity, that's kind of fun.
It is fun. I thought it was really a neat, almost sort of paradoxical, but very realistic, right? Like I'm sure that there are a ton of people in the 80s and early 90s who had that aesthetic because that's the look. I mean, the way you dress doesn't mean that's who you are personality-wise, but it is so funny because you come on screen and there's just something about, like, the hair is so big and it's such a big, and you're kind of looking down and it's like, but then such a sweetness inside him, and it's a beautiful character. It's really, and it's fun.
Yeah, that's cool you say that because Eddie himself has that. And I didn't get to meet him till we were filming the first day. So I had kind of intuitively made my way, towards the character. And then I met him in person the first day of filming. And I was like, oh, thank God. It's right. It feels right. Because he's a very sweet, poetic soul. Like I really like Eddie a lot. He has and I think, Joel and and Richie, in writing the script, obviously they know him, and so they were able to give some beautiful kind of indicators for me, in approaching it that helped a lot.
It's such an interesting challenge. Have you many times portrayed someone who is a living, breathing person who can come to the set and watch you do it, and you can be compared against the original? That's
not that I can recall. Yeah,
it seems like a special challenge.
Yeah, I mean, and then there's other ones where it's not based on a living person, but a book, and then there's that where people have their own kind of connection. There's a little bit of extra pressure there for sure, but at the end of the day, I think as a performer slash artist, whatever you want to call it, the weird thing about it is you have to care about those things, but then also know how not to care about those things, and just really. I mean, one of the things I'm very thankful for to Jeannie Francis, who played my mother on General Hospital, was she told me when I was a very young actor, she said, trust your instincts. And that has been a really good thing throughout the years, because if you're using your rational faculties too much, it'll kill you as an artist, no matter what you're doing. But if you are allowing that sort of childlike innocence and wonder and intuitiveness to be alive in you, it'll serve you much better. And funny enough, I really found a lot of, I don't know what you'd say, kind of, there's something about that spirit in Orthodoxy, where we're not bogged down by systematic theology. We're okay with mystery. We're okay with it, not just okay with it. I mean, that's central to who we are. And as an artist, I found that to be true throughout my life. And so it was really refreshing to encounter an ancient Christian tradition, the ancient Christian tradition, really, that upholds that wonder and that mystery.
Yeah, and when you were talking, at first I was thinking about is it Elder Paisios who said, to be a Christian, first you have to be a poet, in this sense.
Porphyrios, I think.
Is it Porphyrios? Okay.
Yeah, they probably both said it, but he's the one that I'm aware of. Yeah.
Well, no, he's my favorite. I should have known that. But not that we have favorites,
Yeah.
But no, there is a certain beautiful thing in Orthodoxy where we just reserve this room for God to act and for mystery and that is a childlike wonder and a beauty. But how interesting that also that feeling of, here you are, this contemporary actor, and you have had this experience of mystery in your own life and seen how much life comes out of it. And then to find this 2,000-year-old faith and to find these people writing about it 1,700 years ago, and it matches your own experience, that it's just, thank God for that. But sorry, that's an aside.
No, but it's interesting you say that, actually, because over the last however many years, I've thought about that a lot. I'm very thankful for the intensity of sort of the crucible of working as an artist at a young age, because because I also love reading, I love investigating things, and I think that if I didn't have the artistic crucible that I did at a very young age, I think I might have. I would be a very different person than I am today, and I'm just so thankful for this sort of. I mean, not to get too heady about it, but there was a monk in Romania that I met a couple of years ago, who was an actor prior to becoming a monk. And he was talking about this, and he said, when there's a famous actor in Romania who was a very, spiritual person. And so he was kind of making this observation that the monk was sharing with me. But anyway, he said that when you are playing a character, when you're acting in a certain role, and I would say this is true for kind of any artistic endeavor, whenever you're putting yourself into something like this, they have shown that, you know, the neuro pathways in your brain can grow and change. There's this, what is it called? Neuroplasticity or something like this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But this monk, it was so beautiful. He said, this proves that we can grow in Christ, you know? And I thought, wow, that's really something. And then I thought about, you know, the different roles that I've played, you know, where I played a heroin addict when I was 17 years old, for instance. And the emotional reality that you have to be willing to go there to think, what kind of suffering is somebody going through, or a family member that's watching a loved one go through this. And you know, as an artist, there's a degree of intercession and suffering that you sort of enter into. And yeah, it's not intellectual. It's something else, and it does kind of change you. And so you have to be careful, because it can change you in a negative way if you're sort of channeling dark forces, let's say. But if you're entering into the arts from a place of redemption, a place of beauty, and a place of co-suffering with humanity, then I think, you know, it can sort of it can just change the capacity to weep with those who weep and rejoice with those who rejoice.
Absolutely. Well, and in addition, you're also taking that experience, you're entering into this in a very sympathetic and beautiful, empathetic way. And then you share it with the audience, and you connect them to this suffering person as well, and to this humanity of someone. And it's, yeah, I think you might have talked about that in your book, The Mystery of Art, years ago.
Yeah,
right? You had a book with Ancient Faith. And I remember it really transformed the way I thought about acting when I saw that, because I thought, because I'm a writer, right? So I'm always like, well, acting, you're just reading somebody else's words, you know? And then I was thinking about that and thinking, oh, that's very beautiful, right? To look at it as this co-suffering and this empathy. And then, of course, there's also humility, I think, in it, in the sense that someone else is guiding you, someone else is telling you, you know, please stand here and please say it this way. And you're co-creating, right? Because you have this, you have writers, you have directors, you have yourself, and everybody's sort of putting something, and of course the other people acting with you in the scene, right? And everyone's putting something into it. And would you say that it's like not a solitary art in that sense, unlike maybe some other arts, or is it the same experience as doing anything else, any other creative art?
I mean, that's a great question. It's a very collaborative medium, for sure. You know, whatever percentage it is, whether it's 70%, 90%, I don't know, but a huge, huge portion of acting is listening. And so, you know, it's what the other performer is giving you. And you're so dependent on how something is written. I mean, that's one of the things I loved about, you know, this film, Unsung Hero, was just beautifully written, the script. So it makes the actor's job so much easier, because it's something true is on the page. And that's what, you know, an actor is after, is something true. You know, and the best directors I've ever worked with want their actors to bring everything that they can. You know, they're not obsessed with micromanaging the performer. They want them to bring their heart and soul, their creativity, their instincts, because, you know, the actor or actress is really kind of, I mean, they're embodying the text. They're bringing it to life. And you know, a lot of the best directors are ones that just trust their actors, and they only direct when they need to, you know. And that was certainly something true I found with Joel Smallbone and Richard Ramsey, you know. They only directed when they needed to. And that's a beautiful thing, because that there's a sense of trust and respect and mutual humility and respect in all the performers. It's like the best creative environments to me is whether it's in music, if you're in a band or if you're on a set. It's when everybody is focused on what's being made, and everyone's willing to take a step back. Their own personal ego is totally irrelevant to the process. It's like, what is the best thing for this song? What is the best thing for this scene? That's when I think the best art and beauty takes place, when there's this mutual humility and discovery. Everyone knows we're so vulnerable as artists. We're just discovering. You never know if the scene's going to be good. You don't know if the film's going to work. You don't know if this song's going to come. There's so much faith that goes into it, and so much vulnerability.
That's beautiful. I love that. I want to segue, and it's sort of an awkward segue, but
it's okay. We're
going to run out of time, and I have to talk to you about this. Okay, so you have a sort of an older, newer project. Your Harrowing of Hades, your epic poem, came out in 2023 in January. So it's not brand new, but you just released an album that goes with it. Tell me about this project.
Yes. So it's an epic poem. And I went back and forth with the title, and we ended up with the Harrowing of Hell, even though it's
Oh, is it Hell instead of Hades?
Yeah. No, I went back and forth on that, actually. But then when I saw that it said the Harrowing of Hell in our liturgical books, I thought, okay, I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It's an epic poem about Christ's descent into Hades. And so, I was working on it for almost a decade, really, at least, off and on, refining it, wanting to kind of live the Orthodox faith and, check the work based on the lived experience and make sure that it kind of aligned. So there was a lot of patience with this project, and the book came out. And then this year, just about a month ago, we released the music for the project as well. So there's an album called The Harrowing of Hell that's released. It's a perfect time of year, really, to listen to it. And I was, my hope and prayer with the project is that it would be kind of a meditation on this mysterious cosmic event. My oldest son, Caleb, was 6 or 7 when I first started working on it, and he loved the audio version of Beowulf. He was only 6 or 7. He probably couldn't understand what was going on, but he just was riveted by this epic story of a hero. And it was around that time, and I was reading so much Christian history as well, and the fathers of the church, all these different things. And I thought, I would really love to have something that my children could relate to Christ as the hero of heroes. And this mystery of Christ's victory over death and setting the captives free, it's just the ultimate victory, and it's the ultimate hero. And so that was really what started, the project. And now Elisa, my wife, we do some live events sometimes and do excerpt readings from the book with the music, and especially during this time of year. So that's been a real blessing.
That's neat. It is perfect time. It is the perfect time. So you have an audio book,
yes,
of The Harrowing of Hell. Does it have the music behind it? Because I listened to the soundtrack and I loved it. And I didn't know about the poem, and I'm like, well, he's saying it's a soundtrack, and I'm thinking, well, I mean, it's an event. It could have a soundtrack. But do you have the two recorded and released together? Yeah. Yes.
So the audiobook is on Audible through Amazon, and it has the score and the music throughout the audiobook as well. But the album was put together so, people can just kind of listen to the music in a more,
It's beautiful.
I guess,
No, it's a
prayerful
beautiful score.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's neat. Well, and it is absolutely the time, right? It's really Holy Saturday is less than a week away. It's my favorite day of the year. But it should be Pascha, but it's really the harrowing of hell that really, I don't know. It's so beautiful, and it's so beautiful, the first resurrection. But okay, I have there was something I was just thinking that I had to bring up with you, Jonathan, before you go, and I don't remember what it was. So never. Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah.
Tell us the story about when you found Orthodoxy.
Oh,
like at what point? Because you were talking about being in Rome and thinking about church history. What happened next?
Okay, so I went on a quest of sorts, and I started trying to read as much as I could get my hands on. Now, Orthodoxy is still relatively hidden in some sense in the States, but it was even more so back in 2006, 2007. So as I started reading Christian history, I had no concept of the Orthodox Church. When I was in Romania, we encountered it, but I had no reference point for it. So I thought, oh, this is kind of some bizarre offshoot of Roman Catholicism. Like I just, I really had no place to put it. So as I was reading Christian history, it was primarily Roman Catholic and Protestant perspectives. But the amazing thing was, in the middle of all this, I realized that I could actually read not only, modern writers, historians writing about early Christianity, but I could read the fathers of the church. As a Protestant, you don't really know this. Yeah. And so that was mind-blowing to me. I felt like it was like Christmas. I was like, wait a second, I can read the letters of St. Ignatius of Antioch. I can wait, what? And so I just started ordering, everything I could find. And as I was reading the fathers of the church, I just more and more, I was like, okay, hold on a second. This is nothing like what I was told at all. Like I was told that when Constantine became a Christian, Christianity was corrupted, and it was corrupted all the way until Martin Luther, and the basic narrative.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, no, this isn't the case at all. I mean, here's the hierarchy is right here, the bishops and the Holy Eucharist, and everything that is in place was all in place long before, St. Constantine. So that was wild. And then, but I still didn't know anything about Orthodoxy. So I thought, okay, I was looking at, Roman Catholicism thinking, well, maybe I'm going to become Roman Catholic. But then I was seeing things in the Roman Catholic Church that just didn't really align to me with the early church and with the fathers of the church. So it was actually quite distressing, because Protestantism quickly, I don't remember who it was. Somebody said to read history is to cease to become Protestant. And I don't mean to be offensive to any Protestants out there. Very thankful for my journey. But that was the case for me as well. As soon as I opened that door and started, genuinely looking at history, I couldn't see a strong enough foundation in the Protestant churches to justify. I felt like we were kind of making it up as we went along. So I was praying to God. I know we're running out of time. I was praying to God.
Good. Keep going.
At it was the middle of the night, and it was genuinely kind of a dark night of the soul, because I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't be Protestant anymore. I know that, because it just seems like anarchy and a free for all. And I can't become Roman Catholic because there are things in that church that are not aligned with what I'm reading in the history of Christianity. I'm so confused. So I was praying to God saying, where is your church? Like, I don't understand. You said the gates of hell will not prevail against your church. So where is it? And in that moment, as I was praying, I felt this very, very faint voice just say, look at the Great Schism. And I thought, oh, the Great Schism, what's that? I remember something about that. I remember reading something about that. And as soon as I went back to the Great Schism and really looked at it and didn't just kind of glance by it,
right,
that was when it clicked. I was like, oh. And I remember going to my wife and saying, after I'd researched a bit more, I said, honey, I know this is going to sound a bit crazy, but I think the Orthodox Church is the church. I think it's the actual church. And she was like, what? And I was like, no, I'm serious. Like, I think it's the actual holy tradition. I think this is the church. And, there's more to it. I know we ran out of time, but it was the answer to a lot of yearnings inside of us that we'd had for so many years. The beauty, the mystery, the mysticism, the prayer life of the church. It's just, we thank God every day. Yeah.
Thank God. And what an amazing shock that we can walk into an Orthodox church just outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and find holy tradition. Who knew? Who knew? It's amazing because it turns out to have been all around us the whole time.
Exactly.
So thanks be to God. Yeah. Thanks. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for coming on the program tonight. This has just been delightful. Thank you
for
so
having
much.
Me.
Thank you. And thank you to our audience for joining us. And come back again and we'll meet another everyday Orthodox Christian and have a beautiful Holy Week in Pascha. Good night.